it's a terrible cold fact that the UK will be treated as a useful idiot for China.
The Times reports that the Prime Minister is going to approve the new supersized Chinese embassy in London this week, despite security concerns around the location of the site near the Tower of London, which is alongside some of Britain's most sensitive communications cables. It's these underground cables that transmit financial data to the City of London, as well as email and messaging traffic for millions of internet users. However, the security services at MI5 and MI6 did not raise any formal objections to the plans, and Downing Street says consolidating Chinese diplomatic premises onto a single site has some security advantages. So could this actually be a good thing, or are we playing into China's hands? Let's ask Sir Iain Duncan Smith, the former leader of the Conservative Party and co-chair of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. Good afternoon, Iain.
Good afternoon.
So we've obviously had this reporting from the Times that the Prime Minister is going to approve this. We've also had some reports about the secret underground rooms in this embassy, that when the plans were made public, there was a lot of the rooms was not clear what they were there for, and those plans have now been leaked. Do you think this strengthens the case against the embassy, and why do you think Keir Starmer is still set on pressing ahead with it?
Well, first of all, the government has actually really been lying about the nature of the cabling. First of all, they denied it. They then said it was nothing significant and it wasn't that close. And they said that it wasn't connected. Well, we know that there have been two previous banks, I think, who have been on the site since it was able to be bought, purchased or used. And the cabling, therefore, to the city was all there anyway. So they've been connected for some considerable time. So first of all, this stuff about there being no problem was utter nonsense. You're right to say that the security services, particularly MI5, has not raised any objections publicly. But we know by briefings from various members of this that they are deeply uneasy about what's going on. They're not the only ones. The Americans, our other Five Eye counterparts from Canada to Australia to others, have all raised objections with the government about the location and scale of this embassy. You know, America has a big embassy, but when they wanted to make the big embassy, they were told, you go south of the river, not north, into what is essentially a very overcrowded area. And those cables run from Canary Wharf through to the city and also all the way along the embankment, also towards central London and particularly towards the security services themselves. So all of this was part of the row about what happened. They were told to show what the usage of this place would be, and the Chinese government refused to redact it when they made the application. Only now have we got hold of redacted versions which demonstrate that the government itself denied that there would be any problem with the kind of usage of the rooms. We know that there'll be 200 extra people from China in that embassy site. And we are pretty certain most of those will be essentially spying on many of us, I suppose. I'm sanctioned by the Chinese government, but also particularly against Hong Kong dissidents who are now resident under the BNO passport scheme, who fled China in fear of persecution, and many of them being persecuted. And now we see that persecution, that pressure on them has moved across to London, and this will only make that worse for them. So all of this, the government's position on this has been terrible from start to finish. They've denied stuff, they've obfuscated. And here's one for you. We know that after the Tower Hamlets turned down the planning application before the last election, China President Xi said they wouldn't bother to apply again unless they had assurances from government that they would receive their planning permission. Well, of course, nothing happened before the election. After the election, suddenly in goes their second planning objection, their appeal. And they said they wouldn't do it unless they had confirmation.
And they seem to have got it.
And all of a sudden they have. And then you saw in Rio de Janeiro, Starmer sitting rather, I thought, meekly at the corner table with Xi, saying, "You'll be pleased to know that we have taken the application in." Well, how would Xi know what that meant unless he'd been well briefed beforehand? That was the plan, and of course it is the plan. And then to make this decision on political grounds, not on any practical grounds whatsoever. So I think it's a bad step. It adds more power to China. China is a country that doesn't like what we do, doesn't believe in freedom of speech, doesn't believe in democracy, doesn't believe in independent courts. And they want to trash all of what we do. And I just find this astonishing, this government, which is meant to be serious about security, can do this.
Well, this is all part of a kind of reset because Sir Keir Starmer is due to go to Beijing later this month, and relations have been sort of in the freezer for quite a long time. And it feels as if we're going back to that kind of golden era where the Conservative Party under David Cameron and George Osborne was much closer to China. How do you feel about that visit? Because there needs to be some kind of relationship, economic relationship with China. We can't pretend they don't exist. But when it comes to security, it's how do you disentangle those two things is the thing the government seems to be struggling with.
Well, when he goes, and he's bound to go because this is all part of the plan, they won't have him until they've actually seen as it were, the white of his eyes by the planning permission process. So when he goes, I hope he takes strong kneepads. Because as I said, this is a project which we nickname now Project Kowtow, which was a Chinese form of on bended knee to the emperor. Well, this will be on bended knee to the new emperor in President Xi. And it's a terrible, cold fact that the UK will be treated as a useful idiot for China. And what they want to do is dump all their overproduced goods. Bear in mind, the Chinese economy a while back got into real trouble because overproduction of housing, etc. And they've been in, not a slump, certainly a massive downturn from 5% growth a year to hardly any growth at all. The domestic economy, therefore, is in a bit of a mess. And this is a time of vulnerability for them. But instead of that, what he's going to do is start throwing lifelines to them, because what they want a trade arrangement in which they can dump all their produced goods. Bear in mind, the government said they would subsidize all overproduction so that people stayed in work, even though there was little demand domestically. So they've got these huge piles of slab steel, of batteries, of cars, electric cars, all these sort of things, solar arrays, the wind farm materials. All of those are being carried on being produced, and they now dominate the market. They're subsidized. Much is being produced by slave labor. But we will open the door for these products to be dumped on our market, thus destroying much of what we already produce. The car industry, the steel industry, various other bits of manufacture will go. This is the big problem for us, is what they're after, they think, is growth. What they will get instead is a kind of satellite status for the UK with China. China is not an ally. It's not a friend. It opposes everything we believe in. And many of our friends are astonished at this decision all around the world.
And finally, Iain, I couldn't have you here without asking about what was the big story of yesterday, if I can be ever so cheeky, which was your former colleague Nadeem Zahawi going over to Reform. Were you surprised or saddened? What did you make of it? Because it seemed to take a lot of people by surprise.
Well, I've known Nadeem for a long time. I've been a friend of his for a long time on a personal basis. So his decisions are obviously his own. But I did find it rather amusing when he was asked specifically at the conference, having been extolling the virtues of Nigel Farage, he was reminded that it wasn't always like this, and that previously he had called him a racist and mad and all the rest of it. And they kept saying, well, that was a long time ago. It wasn't that long ago. And the second thing I'm a bit surprised about him doing is because he actually left his seat. I think they were going to have a
ballot
poll
on him, I
exactly
vaguely
right.
remember this.
So he left his seat and therefore wasn't an MP as a result. I don't know if he thinks he's going to be able to just return if he wanted to become an MP as a result of this. So personally, I don't think that he is going to get on very well with people in Reform, but that's his problem, not mine. When I look at the polling that came out yesterday about Kemi's leadership qualities, what you'll see in every single one of them, her against the Green, her against Starmer, her against Farage, she heads. She's above them all. She's really begun to catch on to the public for her strength, her courage, and her intellect. And I think we will see her develop dramatically. So I think that he may regret this fairly soon.
And very, very quickly, Nadeem Zahawi famously tweeted, as we now know, saying that he would be a Conservative till he dies. Is that the same for you? Very briefly.
Well, I hope he has good health. But all I can say is the door is always open for him to come back when he realises what a mistake he's made.
And yourself, Sir Iain, you'll be a Conservative till you die?
Well, I intend to leave politics before I die if I can, touch wood. But I have to tell you that I believe strongly that what Britain needs is what Kemi Badenoch can produce: strength, courage, intellect. There's much of Mrs. Thatcher in her, I see, in all those facets of her, and she's not frightened of taking a stand, even when it is unfashionable. She was one of the first out the doors in terms of the trans issue, where she took a stand for women's rights. And those are the sort of things that I think mark her out above others who just follow. She is a leader.
Well, thank you very much. That was Sir Iain Duncan Smith, the former leader of the Conservative Party and co-chair of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China.